Vladimir Putin stepped off his government jet not in Moscow, not in Berlin, but in Alaska. Waiting on the red carpet wasn't a NATO envoy or stern-faced diplomat. It was Donald Trump, clapping enthusiastically like he was greeting a Hollywood A-lister. Cameras flashed as the two men shook hands with warm smiles and slipped into the same armored limousine. This wasn't just another summit. This was a stage meticulously designed where two former adversaries now stood shoulder to shoulder like allies. But the real shock, it wasn't about who showed up, it was about who didn't. Ukraine's president, Vladimir Zelensky, the man leading a nation torn apart by war, was nowhere to be seen. Uninvited, unmentioned, ignored. And in just a few carefully orchestrated hours on an American military base, one message rang loud and clear: peace could be negotiated between two billionaires. While the bloodied nation at the center of it all watched from the sidelines. This wasn't politics as usual. This was billionaire diplomacy, where every handshake sends a signal, and every smile could be traded for thousands of lives. And if you think this was just a historic peace attempt, what happens at the 9-minute mark might make you question everything you thought you knew. From the moment the jet's wheels touched down, the message was clear. This was Trump's stage. Anchorage, Alaska, a U.S. Air Force base normally reserved for military exercises had been transformed into something resembling a red carpet gala, the kind of spectacle more fitting for a luxury product launch than a high-stakes diplomatic meeting. And Trump played the part to perfection, wearing a Navy suit in his signature confidence. He stood just past the edge of the tarmac, clapping with theatrical gusto as Vladimir Putin descended the aircraft stairs. Cameras swiveled, drones hovered. Every angle was captured. Every moment was choreographed. This wasn't about foreign policy, it was branding. And the brand billionaire bravado meets geopolitical theater. Observers were quick to notice the optics. No NATO flags, no American generals in sight, just two powerful men, shaking hands as if decades of sanctions, cyber attacks, and covert wars had never happened. It was a handshake not of reconciliation, but of reinvention. For Trump, the handshake signaled that he was back in the driver's seat of global influence. For Putin, it was a personal victory stepping onto U.S. soil, not as a fugitive, but as a guest of honor. And the setting icy Alaska, a symbolic halfway point between two former Cold War adversaries, made sure the visual message was unmistakable. Trump wasn't just hosting a meeting, he was producing a moment, and in true billionaire fashion. The question wasn't just, what will they discuss? It was who's really in control when the cameras are rolling. Donald Trump doesn't do subtle, moments after the cameras stopped flashing. He faced the press with a smile that looked rehearsed. And then, in true dealmaker fashion, he dropped his terms on the table. I want the killing to stop. Immediately, no preamble, no diplomacy, just to demand a total ceasefire in Ukraine, with no conditions, no phased withdrawal, no territorial roadmap. It was classic Trump, bold, uncompromising, and made for prime time. But behind the soundbite was a dangerous gamble, because Trump wasn't negotiating, he was performing. Unlike past summits, where years of back-channel work precede even a handshake, this meeting had all the markings of a solo play. There were no foreign policy advisors flanking him, no joint task force, no detailed peace framework. What he offered Putin was a stage. What he asked in return was silence on Ukraine and in the world of geopolitics. That's a terrible trade. Analysts were quick to warn Putin doesn't bend under pressure, he extracts leverage. By demanding an immediate end to the war without outlining the consequences of inaction, Trump handed the Russian president a strategic gift: legitimacy without concessions. And yet, Trump didn't flinch. To his supporters, this was proof of his courage, a billionaire president playing high-stakes poker with nuclear diplomacy. To his critics, it was recklessness disguised as confidence. And maybe both were right, because in the billionaire world Trump knows so well, perception often outweighs substance. Deals are made in headlines, not in hallways. But here's the problem. You can walk away from a failed business deal. You can't walk away from a failed peace. The stakes weren't just reputational, they were global. And every second he stood beside Putin, smiling for the cameras. Trump bet a little more of America's influence and a lot more of Ukraine's future. While Trump and Putin strolled the red carpet like old friends reunited, one figure was conspicuously absent, the man whose country has borne the brunt of the war, President Vladimir Zelensky. There was no invitation, no mention in the official agenda, not even a courtesy phone call. For Zelensky, this wasn't just a diplomatic insult, it was a public erasure. The message was chilling, the war might still be raging, but the world's most powerful men were now discussing its end without the leader of the nation under attack. Zelensky responded swiftly, condemning the summit as illegitimate and warning that any deal struck without Ukraine's voice would not hold the weight of justice. Only the shadow of convenience. It was more than a soundbite. It was desperation wrapped in defiance. Because in billionaire politics, deals are often made behind closed doors, where the ones with money and military might decide the future of nations, like they're moving chess pieces. And here, the stakes weren't stocks or oil, they were lives. To many watching in Kiev, the Alaska summit didn't look like a peace initiative. It looked like betrayal. Imagine this: your country's being bombed, your people are dying, and the two men holding your fate are shaking hands thousands of miles away, smiling for cameras, sharing private rides, discussing ceasefires over espresso, and you're not even allowed in the room. Some called it realpolitik. Others called it a slap in the face. But the truth lay somewhere darker if Ukraine wasn't at the table. Was it ever meant to survive the negotiation? As the summit rolled on, so did the war, and for those on the front lines, the red carpet might as well have been soaked in silence. Just 3 months ago, Vladimir Putin was a man under indictment, the subject of an international arrest warrant, sanctioned by the West, barred from half the world's summits. Today, he was stepping onto U.S. soil to applause. A red carpet at his feet, a former U.S. president at his side, and a limousine door held open just for him. To anyone watching, the transformation was surreal. Putin didn't need to say a word. The images spoke louder than any speech. Gone were the isolated press conferences and grainy Zoom calls from bunkers. Now, he was front and center, framed by American flags and flanked by cameras that didn't dare blink. It wasn't a summit, it was a reintroduction. And Trump, willingly or not, had just played the role of kingmaker. For years, Putin had been portrayed as a pariah, a dictator, a war criminal, a relic of Cold War aggression. But now he was being welcomed like a statesman. The optics were unmistakable. And in international politics, optics are power. It was the billionaire playbook applied to foreign policy: control the narrative, change the perception, re-enter the room. Just as billionaires use magazine covers, yacht parties, and foundation galas to scrub their names clean, Putin was using Trump's stage to do the same, one handshake at a time. And the question no one wanted to ask became unavoidable. Was this a genuine step toward peace, or had Trump just handed a former KGB officer the most valuable asset in global politics: legitimacy, whatever the answer? One thing was clear. For Putin, this wasn't diplomacy, it was resurrection. And in front of the cameras, it looked like it was working. The location wasn't random. Alaska, a frozen outpost sitting just across the Bering Strait from Russia, became the stage for one of the most symbolically charged meetings in recent history. Not Geneva, not Brussels, Anchorage. This wasn't neutral ground, this was Trump's turf. And that mattered. Because in the world of billionaires, the one who controls the location controls the narrative. By choosing a U.S. military base, Trump sent a crystal clear message. This is my show, my summit, my rules. No European diplomats, no international mediators, just two power players, face to face, under American skies. But the most telling moment wasn't in the press statements or the formal photos. It came when Trump and Putin, after the handshakes and smiles, stepped into the same limousine, doors closed, curtains drawn, no aides, no interpreters, no microphones. Just two men who had built their empires on secrecy and spectacle, now alone in a bulletproof vehicle, rewriting the script of global diplomacy Observers called it surreal. Critics called it dangerous. But for those familiar with the billionaire mindset, it was familiar territory, because billionaires don't trust conference tables. They trust closed rooms, whispered deals, and eye contact. And in that brief, chilling image of two leaders gliding away from the cameras together, the public was reminded of a hard truth. Real decisions aren't always made on stage. They're made in silence, between the powerful, and behind doors will never open. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a showdown. And the world was left wondering who walked away with the upper hand for Donald Trump. This summit was more than a handshake. It was a gamble, one that could define his political comeback or unravel his credibility on the world stage. He rolled out the red carpet, he delivered the optics. But when the cameras turned off, there was no signed agreement, no roadmap to peace, not even a joint statement, just images, just impressions. And in the billionaire world of power politics, that may be enough, or it may be a devastating illusion. Putin walked away rehabilitated. Zelensky remained sidelined. And Trump, he walked a tightrope between history maker and showman. Because sometimes, in global affairs, as in the lives of billionaires, what you appear to do matters more than what you actually accomplish. So the question lingers, did Trump just take the first step toward peace? Or did he hand a war criminal the photo op of a lifetime? You tell us. Was this statesmanship or showmanship? Drop your thoughts below.